Money to him was never just currency. It was permission. Permission to move freely, to chase ideas wherever they led, to build a world that matched the sound in his head. Freedom meant traveling with his music, carrying it across borders, across languages, across generations. André Rieu was the kind of man who believed so completely in a vision that he was willing to risk everything for it, even bankruptcy, just to raise a stage high enough for his dreams. And for years, beneath the glow of orchestral lights and sweeping melodies, that belief held strong. But behind the grandeur, a quieter truth waited. One few imagined would surface so painfully. At the center of that truth stood Marjorie, his lifelong muse, his partner, his wife, a woman whose strength was never loud, whose influence was rarely visible, yet whose presence shaped nearly every note of his life. As the world applauded André's triumphs, Marjorie was already preparing for a different kind of departure. Not from love, but from visibility. Not from devotion, but from the stage itself. When a devastating diagnosis entered their lives, she chose silence over spectacle. And in that choice, a chapter of their shared story began to close. Comment or write Ribim A-R-J-G-E-R-I-E Rieu to honor her. ***. Long before the sold-out arenas and televised concerts, there was an 11-year-old boy with a violin and an uncheckable dream. André Rieu practiced not for applause, but for possibility. At that same tender age, fate introduced him to Marjorie Kaufman, then just 13, already thoughtful, already steady. She saw something in him that even he could not yet fully name. While his hands learned melodies, her mind learned how to shape direction. She would later earn a doctorate in German literature, yet she deliberately chose a life away from the spotlight. Not because she lacked presence, but because she understood power did not always need to be seen. For 55 years, their partnership unfolded in quiet precision. Marjorie became the unseen architecture of André's empire, guiding opera management, shaping decisions, and anchoring the chaos of international success. As André carried classical waltz into modern stadiums filled with new audiences, she ensured the foundation never cracked. When the Johann Strauss Orchestra was founded in 1987, it was not just a professional milestone, but a shared vow. She stood beside him as an equal, managing operations, organizing tours across continents, advising on stage design, and refining musical selections. André would later admit, again and again, that Marjorie was his true editor, his creative compass, his mirror. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. Audiences saw the tailcoat, the dramatic gestures, the theatrical sweep of his violin. What they did not see were the late-night conversations where those ideas were born. Marjorie believed classical music should belong to everyone, not just the initiated. That belief became the heart of their mission. When ambition threatened to overwhelm practicality, it was often her restraint that saved them. In 2007, as André chased global attention with an elaborate recreation of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace, the risk nearly crushed their business. Millions were poured into a vision that teetered on collapse. Yet Marjorie recalibrated finances, restructured schedules, and steadied the enterprise before it fell apart. Her intuition extended beyond numbers. She understood audiences instinctively, knowing when to intervene and when to step back. As the orchestra grew into one of the largest private ensembles in the world, she cultivated a sense of family among its 60 musicians. Birthdays were celebrated on tour buses. Traditions were protected. Everyone lived and performed together as one extended household. This atmosphere did not happen by accident. It was built through her gentle authority, her consistent care, her belief that music thrived best where people felt safe, away from the crowds. The Rieu family lived quietly in Maastricht, shielding their sons from relentless media attention. Headlines rarely chased them. Substance mattered more than spectacle. But time, relentless and uninvited, began to change everything. As Marjorie aged, she slowly withdrew from responsibilities she had once carried effortlessly. Then André's health began to falter. That moment marked the end of her public presence. Fans noticed. Insiders confirmed she stepped away deliberately, choosing privacy and dignity over explanation. After a lifetime of service, she wanted her remaining days to be gentle. Rehearsals ended. Tour management ceased. Silence became her final act. Comment or write ripped Marjorie Rieu to honor her. André spoke openly of the void her absence created, professionally and emotionally. She had not only shared his life, she had built it with him. And as illness crept closer, the man once believed invincible revealed his fragility. Behind the smiles and flawless performances stood someone battling age, disease, and loss. In 2010, a severe viral infection robbed him of balance, inflaming his inner ear and leaving him unable to stand without dizziness. Concerts were canceled. Recovery was slow. Therapy replaced touring. Through it all, Marjorie remained his quiet guardian. Then the world shut down in 2020. Stages went dark. Tours were postponed indefinitely. While others adapted to virtual performance, André fought respiratory issues and exhaustion away from cameras. In March 2024, a severe flu during a Mexico tour forced further cancellations. His son Pierre later spoke of watching his father struggle backstage, determined to play despite visible weakness. Speculation erupted: cancer, neurological disease. No answers came. Silence held Dot in recent interviews. André's words softened, drifted toward legacy, love, and preparation. He sometimes spoke of Marjorie in the past tense, then corrected himself. Fans noticed. Sources confirmed her condition was grave. Hospice rhythms replaced household music. Yet André continued. Each performance became heavier, more emotional. When he played familiar pieces, tears filled the audience. Every note felt like a farewell. He refused to turn illness into spectacle. For him, the show must continue. And now, every standing ovation honors not just his artistry, but a love story that shaped generations. Comment or write rip André Rieu to honor him. Asterisk, asterisk, within the shifting landscape of global art, André Rieu did something few thought possible. He bent tradition without breaking it. He carried classical music out of hushed halls and placed it directly into the hands of the public. Long before the titles and nicknames followed him, before the world called him the Waltz King, André was simply a boy from Maastricht, born into a household where music was not a hobby but a language. His father, a conductor, filled the home with discipline and structure, grounding André in European classical traditions from an early age. Yet even as he mastered technique, André sensed a widening distance between classical music and everyday listeners. To many, orchestral music felt rigid, unapproachable, reserved for those who already belonged. André refused to accept that fate. He believed music should breathe, laugh, and invite. His solution was radical in its simplicity: transform the concert into an experience. Music would no longer stand alone. It would move with humor, light, narrative, and warmth. In 1987, that philosophy took form with the founding of the Johann Strauss Orchestra. It was not just an ensemble, but a statement. Formal attire remained, but stiffness disappeared. Silence gave way to participation. Audiences were no longer observers. They became part of the rhythm. Pieces like The Blue Danube and The Merry Widow were reborn in environments where dancing and laughter were welcome. André expanded the repertoire further, blending classical foundations with contemporary ballads and film music, drawing in listeners who had never considered attending a symphonic performance. Titanic themes, seasonal classics, and familiar melodies shared space with traditional waltzes. His concerts unfolded like stories, supported by dramatic lighting, sweeping stage designs, and emotional pacing that mirrored theater more than academia. Each performance became a communal celebration rather than a lesson. Comet Aright Rip André Rieu to honor him. The scale of his vision grew steadily. Outdoor concerts filled iconic locations across Europe and South America. Maastricht's Friedhof Square transformed into a sea of faces. Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace glowed beneath orchestral sound. São Paulo's Allianz Park pulsed with energy. Millions watched these performances through live broadcasts, witnessing classical music reintroduced as joyful, alive, and deeply human. André's reach stretched far beyond borders. Tours crossed North and South America, Asia, and Australia, proving that melody needed no translation. His instinctive understanding of audience emotion allowed him to connect across cultures with ease. Accessibility became central to his mission. Affordable tickets, expansive venues, and modern staging dismantled barriers that had kept classical music distant for decades. André did not discard tradition. He carried it forward, reshaped for the present. Sales climbed into the tens of millions. Digital platforms reached hundreds of millions more. Yet success never dulled his sense of responsibility. For André, music was not ownership. It was stewardship. Comet Aright Rip André Rieu to honor him. On the podium, his leadership extended far beyond conducting. André rejected rigid hierarchies, choosing instead to build harmony both musically and socially. From the beginning, the Johann Strauss Orchestra functioned as a collective bound by respect and shared purpose. He understood that an orchestra could not thrive on talent alone. It needed trust. His business decisions reflected the same creativity that defined his performances. He recognized early that survival required innovation beyond sound. Recordings, DVDs, merchandise, live streams, and touring formed an interconnected system that sustained growth. Revenue funded not just expansion, but generosity. André invested heavily in outreach and education, supporting music schools, donating instruments, and backing programs that brought music to children who otherwise might never touch it. He believed music was a right, not a privilege. Even when illness and financial strain threatened stability, he refused to retreat into caution. Joy, he believed, was an act of resilience. Music had to evolve alongside its listeners or risk fading into irrelevance. Comet Aright Rip André Rieu to honor him. At the core of his philosophy lay a deeply human belief. Music heals. André often described it as both spiritual and emotional, capable of lifting individuals from despair and uniting strangers in shared feeling. This belief shaped every concert. Participation was encouraged. Laughter shared space with reflection. Pieces were chosen not just for beauty, but for memory. Familiar songs awakened collective emotion, guiding audiences through carefully crafted emotional journeys. Throughout his life, Marjorie remained his emotional anchor. Their marriage mirrored the harmony he sought to create on stage. Her support during his hardest moments reinforced his belief in endurance through love. André viewed art as a moral force, capable of inspiring compassion and reminding people of their shared humanity. His charitable efforts reflected this conviction, from fundraising concerts for disaster relief to support for healthcare initiatives, education, and refugee assistance during the global pandemic. When silence replaced applause, André turned to digital spaces to offer comfort. Recorded concerts and messages reached isolated listeners around the world. Letters poured in from fans who found solace in familiar melodies during grief and uncertainty. André responded with humility, insisting that artists must remain present during hardship. Even as challenges mounted privately, he continued to give publicly. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him, yet behind the warmth and optimism lay tension. Great ambition often invites conflict. André's dual role as visionary artist and business leader placed him at the center of intense internal disputes. The most significant erupted during preparations for the ambitious 2007 tour featuring the Schönbrunn Palace replica. The project demanded unprecedented resources. Advisors warned of financial collapse. Logistics strained. Doubt spread through the organization. André refused to abandon the vision. Arguments intensified. Resignations followed. The tour succeeded, narrowly saving the company from ruin, but the cost was profound. André later acknowledged the strain it placed on his team and himself. The experience reshaped his approach, teaching him balance between imagination and sustainability. Though conflicts continued throughout his career, none threatened him as deeply. He emerged still standing, still leading, still believing. Whether anyone can truly replace him remains uncertain. His legacy, like his music, resists duplication. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. **Time. Relentless and impartial, began to reshape the rhythm of André Rieu's life. The man who once moved effortlessly across stages now measured each step with care. While the public still saw elegance and command, those closest to him sensed the quiet recalibration happening behind the curtain. Illness had introduced itself not as a single moment, but as a slow accumulation of limitations. Each recovery demanded more patience than the last. Each return to the stage carried deeper weight. Yet André refused to surrender the essence of what defined him. Music was not merely his profession. It was his compass. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. The absence of Marjorie grew heavier with time. For decades, she had been the silent axis around which everything turned. Without her presence, decisions felt lonelier. The orchestra noticed. The team adjusted. Longtime members stepped closer, offering not just musical precision but emotional steadiness. Rehearsals slowed. Schedules softened. André's public appearances became fewer, carefully selected to preserve his strength. Interviews shifted from spontaneity to preparation. Words were chosen deliberately, sometimes with visible effort. The man who once spoke effortlessly now paused, reflecting not just on answers, but on meaning. Audiences sensed the transformation before it was ever explained. Each concert carried an unspoken awareness that something precious was unfolding in limited time. Applause lingered longer. Tears flowed more freely. When André lifted his violin, it was as though he carried not only melody, but memory. He played for those who had stood beside him and were no longer visible. He played for love that endured beyond presence. Every familiar phrase sounded like gratitude. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. Behind the scenes, the household once filled with constant music shifted into quieter routines. Hospice rhythms replaced touring schedules. Medical care replaced rehearsals. The Rieu family moved gently, deliberately, honoring privacy above all else. No statements were issued. No clarifications offered. Silence became both shield and sanctuary. For André, protecting Marjorie's dignity mattered more than public reassurance. He refused to allow illness to define her legacy or his own. Even as physical strength waned, André's commitment to performance endured. He approached each appearance as an offering rather than an obligation. The orchestra responded in kind, playing with heightened sensitivity, matching his tempo, supporting his pauses. Music became conversation rather than command. The connection between conductor and musicians deepened, shaped by shared history and mutual care. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. Fans across the world adjusted their expectations. They no longer demanded spectacle. They sought presence. Recorded performances were replayed not for perfection, but for comfort. Messages poured in, expressing gratitude for decades of joy. André acknowledged them quietly, aware that his work had traveled far beyond any stage he could stand on. He spoke of legacy not as achievement, but as relationship. Music, he believed, lived only where it was received. The question of succession surfaced inevitably. Could anyone continue what he had built? André himself never offered answers. He believed institutions mattered less than intention. The orchestra would find its own future. The music would move forward. What mattered was that the door remained open, that curiosity replaced fear, that joy continued to lead. His refusal to cling to permanence revealed his deepest confidence. He trusted what he had nurtured. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him. As the years advanced, André's performances became rarer, yet more profound. Each bow carried acknowledgement. Each silence held respect. He no longer rushed endings. He allowed moments to settle. In those spaces, audiences found themselves reflecting on their own lives, their own losses, their own gratitude. André had always believed music mirrored humanity. Now, it did so more clearly than ever. Marjorie's influence remained woven into every aspect of that reflection. Though unseen, she remained present in philosophy and restraint, in the belief that art should serve people rather than impress them. Her choice to step away did not diminish her role. It clarified it. She had given everything she could and then chose peace. Comment or write Rip Marjorie Rieu to honor her. In the final measure of this chapter. André Rieu stands not as an untouchable icon, but as a man who loved deeply, risked boldly, and remained faithful to joy even as time demanded farewells. His story is not one of perfection, but of persistence. Not of dominance, but of devotion. The music continues, softer now, but richer for all it carries. Comment or write Rip André Rieu to honor him.